Welcome, everyone. I'm thrilled you're here for today's conversation about something that can transform your business, having the right number two leader. I'm Alec Broadfoot, CEO of Vision Spark, where we help entrepreneurial companies find and hire the right number two leaders so they can scale their companies and create more impact. If you've ever felt overwhelmed, like everything depends on you, this conversation is for you. The right number two leader is a game changer for all small to mid-sized business. We're in a series now of discussing the impact of a strong number two leader. And to kick things off, I'm excited to introduce today's guest, Josh. I didn't say your name right. Coniglio of Pacific
Coniglio.
Capital. Coniglio. Welcome, Josh.
Hey, Alex. Great to be here. Thank you.
Tell us a bit about Pacific Capital.
Yeah. So Pacific Capital, we're a family office wealth management firm working exclusively with high net worth entrepreneurs, business owners, and their families. We're based here out of Southern California, and we work with clients all across the country.
Do you have any international clients or just in the US?
We do. Yeah, we have a couple clients in Europe and South America as well. Yeah.
Okay. And there are lots of financial advisors out there, financial planners, wealth management. And I see your company is very unique. Can you share some things about your company that make you super unique?
Yeah. So we're boutique in that we only work with a select group of people, specifically entrepreneurs in growth mode or approaching an exit or who have had an exit, who just need that high level of not only wealth management, but other concierge services that we offer. So these folks want an all-in team to manage everything that they have financially because they're busy, right? They're running a company, they're growing a business, or they've got a family, and they don't want to worry about if their financial life is squared away or if their financial freedom's secure. So we come in and do all of the investing, tax planning, estate strategy, charitable planning, all that stuff. So yeah.
And do you have like experts on your team in each of those areas, taxes, estate planning, et cetera?
We do. Yeah, we do. So we have a robust team here, a lot of CFPs on the team, some tax professionals, the best estate planning attorneys in the country we partner with, and yeah, a lot of knowledge that we bring.
And you are the number two for Pacific Capital. So tell us a little bit about what your responsibilities are.
Sure. Yeah, so Chad Willardson's our president and founder, started the company back in 2011. And as a number two leader, my role here is to do a lot of the leadership things in the office around building culture, making sure the vision and goals of the company are in alignment with what we're doing day to day, and also communicating and with clients and managing those relationships. But yeah, it's about leadership in the company and making sure that the whole team is on the same page, based on what Chad has set for our vision and our goals. So.
And so like in a traditional sense, do you oversee like sales and marketing, the finance function, client services, et cetera?
Yeah, so I kind of I consider myself more of a team leader or a captain,
Mhm.
because I think shared responsibility is key and creating other leaders is key. So we have a great team, and every team member has their own specific role and their own lane that they stay in. And I really try to stay out of those lanes. I let them do their thing. But yeah, I oversee all of that and just giving the client the best experience possible. But I do that a lot by trusting the team and kind of staying out of their way. So
So you've hired some great people, I take it.
yeah, yeah, we've been fortunate.
Yeah. I love how you look at your role as the team captain. And there's so many analogies, right? I've looked at had the analogy of, if the entrepreneurship business is like a ship, the entrepreneur is the owner of that ship, and the captain of the ship is the number two. And so if the owner, for some reason, is on the ship and is spending time in the engine room, they really can't give an overview of the company, or especially the number two leader. Sometimes it's important to get your hands dirty and roll up your sleeves. But if you're in the engine room, you really can't direct and guide the ship.
Yeah, exactly. And that's I think super important and often missed by visionary entrepreneurs is they want to do it all.
Mhm.
And Chad and myself have a great relationship, and the vision comes from him, and my role is to make sure that that vision's executed on. And really, it's shared responsibility and shared leadership. I don't think that leadership means authority. I think that leadership means creating other leaders and leading by example. And we have some great leaders on this team. I mean, everybody in their role is a leader somehow. So
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. John Maxwell, he used the term influence. So you're a leader if you have any sort of influence, right? So in a sense, we're all leaders. And yeah, so Chad, friend, colleague, he's your visionary. And what are his responsibilities in your business?
sure, yeah. So he's responsible for setting the tone and kind of laying out the roadmap on where we're going as a company. We've made a lot of changes in our business over the last few years and really tailoring it toward that high net worth entrepreneurial family. And his role is to set that vision and the goals that we have internally, and then communicate that to me, obviously, and then for me to pass that down to the rest of the team. So his role is number one, going out and finding, making relationships with new clients, but also just guiding us from the top.
Hmm. And he's not super active in the business. He's not in his office Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, right? So, how often is he in the business in your office, and how often does he working on a day-to-day basis? Would you say?
Yeah, it's interesting. He works harder than all of us. And I think a lot of people see him traveling and they see him out doing things, but no one outworks that guy. And I noticed that early on when I joined Pacific Capital, he's the hardest working guy out there. He works from wherever he is, he's always networking, he's always prospecting, he's always editing, creating content, writing books. So yeah, he may not be in the office every day, but he's here quite a bit, a few days a week. But he's always working in his role. What he doesn't do is he doesn't come in and work on operations, right? He's not here doing paperwork and directing the internal stuff. So he's got his lane and he's really good at staying in it. And I think we all kind of benefit from that. So
And some entrepreneurs out there that don't work in the business or want to take a free day, or maybe they want to travel to an amazing conference down in Naples, Florida, and their clients are there, and employees in the business are like, "Hey, what's this guy doing traveling to Naples? We're here slaving away." Does your team ever have any sort of thoughts like that with Chad traveling and networking?
zero. I mean, confidently zero.
Mm.
Everybody in this company knows how hard Chad works, and his location, I don't think, is relevant to that.
Hmm.
So he's also built an environment here where we thrive and we have a lot of autonomy and we have a lot of trust. And so it's nobody here expects him to be in here day to day. I think candidly things run smoother when he's not here day to day. So, but yeah, no one has ever thought that, and that's just not the culture we have. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He gives us the freedom to do what we do and make decisions, and I think that in turn gives him the freedom to be where he wants to be and work where he wants to work. So.
That's incredible. I think, something that we're talking about without saying the word, but, Chad really stays in his unique ability, and you stay in your unique ability, and you really have a unique ability team. So what would you say Chad's unique ability is?
Yeah, Chad's unique ability is to make relationships and nurture relationships for the long term. I mean, he's so well connected and he's a great connector of people. So we've never had a case where someone was like, "Hey, Chad, do you know someone in this industry?" He knows them. He knows somebody.
Mhm.
Um, he's also really good at creating content, and by content I mean writing books. He's very creative. He's truly that creative entrepreneurial spirit that, you kind of need to grow a business to the next level. Um, Not the best operations person, but I think what's unique is that he knows that,
Mhm.
right? Figuring that out and knowing that, hey, operations isn't my thing. I'm good at setting the tone. I'm good at, setting the vision, but I don't need to be in there every day. So,
Has he ever ventured outside of his unique ability and you've had to kind of coach him to stay in his lane? Or is that he knows it?
he knows it. He's been doing this a long time, but there are times where I'm like, hey, I'll handle this. And we have really, really good communication. We've got a great relationship. He's not only our founder and president, but he's a friend as well. So we talk a lot. We talk almost every day. And he knows, I think, when I tell him like, hey, I'll handle this one, so
Yes. So that's some good verbiage, right? That I'll handle this one means this is my unique ability. I got this, and you stay in your unique ability.
yeah,
Yeah,
yep.
I love it. My integrator and myself, we filled out kind of like unique ability inventory. It was a US version, Delegate and Elevate. And I wrote down all these things I didn't like and I'm not good at. And those were all the things that my integrator loved and was good at. And so it's so freeing to see that I could really let go and stay in my unique ability. So you talked a little bit about your cadence, or I was going to say cadence, but you talk to Chad almost every day. Do you have a formal meeting once a week, once a month?
Early on, we'd follow a lot of the EOS principles and had our weekly meetings. And I think that was in the building phase of having truly handing over the reins to me. And so we had, weekly or even twice a week meetings just to check in on things. But now it's more of just a daily check-in on, opportunities, any challenges, very high level. There's been, years of trust that have been built. And but early on, I think it's super important to make sure that they're communicating, the expectations are met. You figure out quickly too what types of things he wants to be involved with and what types of things they don't want to be involved with. So, there's some things where he wants to know what's going on in that section, or there's other things where he's like, you take care of that. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And those of you that are listening, and if you do have questions, go ahead and put them in the Q&A section of the meeting. So when did you realize that this was a role suited for you, when you wanted to be the number two with Pacific Capital?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I was being groomed for this role early on. So actually, before I even started my first day, Chad sent me the book Rocket Fuel. And if you haven't read it, everyone should read that book. Every entrepreneur should read that book. And so they talk a lot about that relationship, right? And the visionary integrator relationship. And so I knew early on that that would be the path I would go down. And it took a while, right? It wasn't overnight. It took a couple years for it to fully transition over. But I knew coming into this that that was what it would be. Um, and it was exciting. I mean, we had a very extensive interview process. When we interview team members, we go really deep to making sure that they're the right person. They understand the culture of the company, and he did a lot of he put a lot of time into my interview process. So
And how long have you been in that role now?
I would say truly a number two, probably 4 years, and I've been with the company for 6. So it took time. I think there was a big transition period early on when we were building trust. I was getting to know the way he operated, really aligning myself with the vision of that he had for the company. And then coming into a leadership role internally, there were people here that are still here that were here long before me, right? And so you have to build trust and you have to build rapport with those team members. But yeah, so about 4 years.
Okay. And what in your career prepared you for this role? What roles did you have, or what skills did you have that prepared you for this role here?
Yeah, that's a good question. My previous firm I was at, I was kind of the right hand. I wouldn't say number two because there weren't as many leadership, you know, opportunities or things that I took care of there. Um, I think I don't know what have really prepared me. I felt there were some times early on with Chad and Pacific Capital where he just kind of threw me into the fire, and that was super helpful. It was challenging at that time, but I could tell that that's where the growth was happening. I remember a couple meetings specifically that were like, "Oh, this is really happening. Like I'm going to run this," and so a lot of it. I don't know if I could have prepared better, but I've had some experience in that before. So
Yeah, interesting. And I think that's a great trait for leaders is to let their employees fail, like having that freedom to fail. And so that's the way they can grow, right? And early on in my life, I worked at a bank and I had a manager and she would use the term scrape your knees, right? So Alec, I want you to scrape your knees a bit. I want you to learn from this. It doesn't have to be perfect. Or even in my supervisor role, she would say, you need to let others scrape their knees, right? And so, and what you are talking about is you and Chad have a lot of trust. And we have a question from someone listening here. And the question is, as someone new to EOS, but with deep experience in other structured values-based business models, what advice would you give on how to earn early trust as an integrator, especially when stepping into it and joining a team that's already begun its EOS journey?
yeah, that's a good question. I always fall back on servant leadership, and that I actively try to set the tone in our office of there's nothing that I would ask a team member to do that I wouldn't do myself. I'm often the first person in here every day. Um, and just showing the team that, we're all in this together, right? Leadership doesn't equal authority in my mind. So, earning the trust of the team, and then with the visionary earning their trust, I think it's about communicating well. It's about sharing challenges, not putting on this persona that I can do everything and I can do everything great, but really communicating about, hey, this is what I'm challenge. This is what's challenging. This is what I'm struggling with. I think being kind of vulnerable in that sense helps build a lot of trust because you're communicating well, right? You're sharing challenges. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I would add to that early in the relationship, the more communication, the better. And so it's really important if you're a new integrator to a company that's already running an EOS, it's super important that you understand how you're going to be measured. What does good performance look like? What does good performance look like in 90 days, 180 days, 360 days? And ask specific questions on the vision and ask questions on what their strengths are and what would you want me to handle. And then I would also encourage building trust with that team and really learning from that team. And so sometimes I see integrators go in and they start making changes right away without really understanding the team, the dynamics, the really becoming an expert in the industry and the process. And so I think that's really important in building trust. So there's another related question. And it says, Josh, I'm curious if you have any best practices for establishing trust, rapport, and respect with your team after moving into a leadership position after being a peer with many of them.
yeah, I think it comes down to having the back of your team. So one leadership principle I adhere to is I take all of the blame and none of the credit. And I'm okay with that. And so if things go wrong or there's a challenge or something happens in the company, I want the team to know that, hey, I'm going to take it on the chin because I'm a leader in here. And then we'll talk about how we can improve. But we don't point fingers in here for blame. There's an extreme ownership culture here where you own what happened. And so if there is a challenge or an issue, Chad doesn't go to that person, he comes to me and it's like, yeah, that's 100% my fault. And I think having the team know that you have their back is a really big deal. And even from the top, Chad himself, you know, I feel like he has my back. There's been times where I've made a call on a decision. It may not have been the decision that he was going to make, but he's always had my back. Okay, that's good. You made that call. Great. And that having that reassurance that you're not going to get in trouble, that the visionary has your back and that you have your team's back, it's a big trust builder. So
Yeah, absolutely. That the alignment between the visionary and integrator, you have to be united front, right? Now, when you're meeting, you get there should be disagreements, there should be challenging each other, but when you're together in front of the team, you need to be united front. So, another question here: do you believe that having experience in a specific industry is essential for being an effective leader within that industry, or can leadership qualities transcend industry-specific knowledge?
it's a good question. I mean, I think leadership is something learned, and it's may not be industry specific. When we hire team members, we don't always hire the most experienced person that's for that role, right? I feel like you can kind of train, other than really technical specific things, you can train a lot of people to do anything almost, but you can't train things like good attitude, motivated, positive, right? Energetic. Those are the intangible things that I think you can't train into someone. So I think leadership is about, I truly think it comes down to communication and emotional intelligence and being able to be a good communicator to the team. So maybe not as industry specific. Yeah.
Yeah, and in my opinion of that, it is so much better to hire a true leader without industry experience that has the EQ and the intangibles and the soft skills and has the smarts. They're bright, they're strategic, critical thinkers. That is so much more important than having someone without that and having an experience, right? And so, sometimes my firm, as we interview these amazing candidates for integrator roles, once one of our clients will push back and they say, I don't see the experience that they have here. And like, we'll say, well, number one, they have everything that you required, but number two, they have all of this that you're not seeing.
Yeah.
So those candidates tend to be the best integrators. And also, our clients are the best clients for us are the ones that say, you know what, I really don't care about industry experience. Maybe if they have somewhat related experience, but I really want a true leader that fits with my culture. So, yeah, so that's a really good question. Josh, in your role as the number two at Pacific Capital, what has been your biggest mistake?
Ooh, that's a good one. Um, there've been, I don't know if it's a mistake, but there've been some team members that have struggled early on. And I always think back and think about, did I equip them with enough to succeed? I think when team members struggle or you have employees that aren't doing great, it's a leadership thing, and are you giving them the right tools to succeed? Are you giving them enough responsibility and trust? And I think back to some team members that didn't work out and think through, did I do enough? So I think those thoughts are on my mind. I don't know if those are mistakes, but just things I think through as we grow as a company is making sure that our entire team is well equipped, that I'm putting them in the right position to succeed. So yeah, that's what comes to mind.
That's so good. That's absolutely so good. Yeah. So what when we've been talking a little about this, but here's a question: what are the most important qualities a number two leader must have to complement the visionary's role and the company's needs?
Yeah. I think you need to be able to prioritize things. Working with a true visionary quick start like Chad, he has a lot of ideas and often it can get overwhelming and there's a lot of different directions that you can get pulled into. And so being able to take those ideas and say, okay, which ones do we need to work on now, and prioritize them, right? Because if you can't do that, you're going to get it'll be messy. You're going to get pulled in a lot of different directions, and you're going to be stressed out and not really have this plan. So prioritizing, and then number two, I think communicating, back to communicating, right? Taking those ideas, putting them on paper, and then building out an action plan with the team on how we're going to implement these things. So, whether it's what types of clients we're going to go after now, or what the new minimums are on what clients we take. So those types of things they change quickly when you work with a true visionary. So prioritizing them and then communication, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know where this came from. I think I heard Gino Wickman say it first, but like a visionary, they have 10 ideas every day. One's good, right? And so I think that's true in myself, got lots of great ideas, and I love how my integrator handles it. And he asks me good questions. He'll say, man, that's a really good idea. We need to implement that. Then he'll say, when do you think we should implement it? What resources do we need to pull on it? Where are those resources going to come from? And so asking really good questions. And it's just really having respect for each other. And even though, Josh, that you are a W-2 employee of Pacific Capital, you're in many ways Chad's partner. And I see the same with my integrator. He's a partner that has my back, that is looking out for the business and every turn. A question from the audience is, how do you manage competing priorities and ensure everyone is on the same page?
Good question. I think it's an alignment of the overall priority and goal of the company first. That comes first across the board. And so I think if there are competing priorities to the vision that the visionary is setting, there's a deeper issue. Obviously, internally, operations wise, there's going to have people or things that need to be prioritized, or people think that this is the most important thing we need to focus on. But I think it's just taking a step back and saying, okay, well, how does this relate to the overall goal and the vision, right? Does this contribute to that? If not, maybe we wait on it a bit, or we shelve it for a while. So it's kind of that prioritization where you compare to what is the impact of this on the overall goal of the company or the overall goal of the client, right? We're a client service-based industry. So making sure that the client's needs and interests come first is super important in our business. So does this align with that? And then second, does this align with the vision of the company?
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. Do you have a VTO that you use, like a one-page business plan that you frequent and look at and share with the team?
Yeah, we have KPIs and other internal indicators that we use to measure our metrics and how we're tracking toward those goals. Those are updated 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays internally. And Chad is always aware of that. I think that's one of the ways he does a temperature check on how we're tracking and how we're doing as a company. So every team member in their role contributes to that sheet, right? That tracker. So it's been pretty effective in showing us where we're doing well, where we're having some challenges, and where we can step in and improve.
The question from the chat is, as a new integrator stepping into an existing EOS environment, how do you balance honoring what's already working with bringing in fresh thinking or innovations, especially when the team is still building trust and rhythm?
Yeah, I think you got to go slow, and I think a mistake that a lot of visionaries make is they hire a new integrator and then they offload everything to them immediately, right? And it's got to be a slower process than that. You got to give that integrator time to build trust with the team, time to understand the vision of the company. And then as the integrator, I think taking a step back and just observing for a while and seeing how things are running and just being patient with it. You know, being a new integrator, you're going to be super motivated, right? And you're excited and you're ready to make a bunch of change. But especially if you have team members that have been there for a while, they're used to a certain way. And if you come in and shake things up too early, there can be some friction. So I think it's observing a lot of communication before making a change, and then getting feedback from the team on ask the team. Like if you're a new integrator to a company and you've got somebody who's been there for 10 years, you should befriend that person and ask them about their role and the challenges they have and how to improve and get their feedback. Um, you can't step in and say, we're going to change all this because this is what I think. It should be, we're going to change all this because you shared this with me and here are my ideas. What do you think? And I think that will build a lot of trust and rapport with team members that have been there a while.
And if you've been listening to me for some time, I talk about the integrator disruption. And so when a company doesn't have an integrator and all of a sudden there's an integrator in place, the existing communication channels are disrupted. So, for example, the visionary would be in a role where everything's coming to him, right? So if there's 3 or 5, 7 direct reports, there's communication back and forth. Now all of a sudden you put the integrator in place, and now there could be confusion of where everything gets communicated. So it's important for the visionary to say, okay, Josh is the number 2 in this company. He's responsible for running the company. So everything goes through him. And then Josh, you're committed to communicating to the visionary. And so it changes. Now it's going to be really hard because these communication channels have been in place for a long time. If someone's been there 10 years or 5 years or what have you. So there's going to be some rough edges, but it's important that both the visionary and integrator are committed to the new relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. And to your point,
Mhm.
I think a lot of that is I remember when that conversation happened, when Chad sat the team down and said, hey, this is in place. But all of the work to get there had already been started. So it wasn't just like flip of a switch, okay, this is happening. It had taken a year and a half, 2 years where the team had already felt like, okay, Josh is doing leadership. He's answering a lot of our questions. He's communicating with Chad. Chad's asking him questions. So it was a gradual buildup, right? And um, but yeah, there's challenges if it happens too fast, for sure.
Yeah, very much so. So, Josh, would you say you have a good work-life balance?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Um,
So, what do you do to make sure of that?
I mean, Chad, we've created an amazing culture here where our office, the financial services industry is, you think of Wall Street, you think of, 14, 16-hour days. Our office is open from 8 to 3. Um, it's unheard of, really. I'm home to see my kids at 3:15, and as is the entire team. And we've just built a culture around come in, work hard, clients come first always, but also go enjoy your personal life, your family. Um, we do a lot of team building activities together, and we're all friends here in that every day someone's spouse and kids are in here or something. So it's just built into the culture, and I understand that a lot of firms they maybe can't do the 8 to 3 schedule, right? But it's worked for us, and we talk a lot about that, a lot about making sure you're recharging outside of work and you're taking time to do what you enjoy, to prevent burnout and those types of things. So
So, what do you do to recharge?
good question. I've got 2 little kids, so that's it's a full-time job. But we like going camping. We like the outdoors quite a bit. So fishing, camping, that type of thing. Anywhere I can get outside is what I enjoy. So
And where do you fish and camp in California?
yeah, so we go to a lot of national parks. So we're going to Sequoia, Hume Lake this summer, Yosemite, and then there's some local places around here we go as well. So yeah.
That's great. That's great. What have been like some of the fun activities that you guys have done as a team?
Yeah, so in December we took we took a trip to Cabo, all of us. Everyone, every team member plus their spouses. This was kind of a year-end celebration. We hit a lot of goals last year, so that was amazing. But we do other things. We've done, Top Golf, escape rooms, just anything to get out and recharge. Last night we were at Chad's house watching March Madness. So, um, at 4 o'clock the game started. So
Right.
we left the
Yeah.
office at 3 and went over there and watched the game. So it's anything we can do to get out and just hang out, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. That's it's so important and so good. And as a visionary, I'm kind of guilty of that. That we don't have as much team activities as we used to. And so yeah. Now, are all the employees in your company, are they all in person, or do you have some remote employees?
100% in person. So when we hire, it's clearly communicated that we don't do remote work. Um, every company is different, right? I'm not saying this as an absolute at all, but for us, financial planning and wealth management is so personal. You're talking the intimate details of someone's financial life, and um, being here together is super important. And I think as a leader, it's challenging to build company culture when everyone is remote, right?
Hmm.
And so there are ways to do it, right? Having in-person quarterly meetings where everybody flies in or drives in or whatever it is. But there's something to being physically near each other that I think is super important. Um, yeah.
Yeah, and I agree with you. We have about 80%, 85% of our employees live here in Columbus, and they're all in the office at minimum 3 days a week. We do have employees in Colorado and Pennsylvania and Texas, and obviously they're not in every day. We do bring them in twice a year, and we do a monthly lunch where we have some teaching and training, and we eat together on screen, and we do our best to emphasize that. But you're absolutely right; it does impact culture a little bit, and it impacts communication quite a bit.
And I think I mean, candidly, the money spent on that is money well spent. Maybe you've got a team that's across the country and it's expensive to fly everyone in and do that. But I think the return on investment for your company is very high. Um, Culture is so important inside of a business, any industry. And so the more you can nurture that, um, I think it'll lead to good results.
Josh, I'm a strategic coach with Chad, and I'm curious that are there any strategic coach tools that you use in your business?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. We're always using strategic coach tools, and there's there's a strategic coach something on someone's desk all the time. So we've fully implemented a lot of those principles, and it's been great. I mean, just some of the thinking tools that we have as a team,
Mhm.
experience transformer comes to mind, right? The impact filter for different projects. Um, yeah, it's been very impactful. And that was, I think Chad's been doing it a long time, but when I first started, they were already doing it. And so learning those principles has been important. And even Chad has two EAs that work for him outside of Pacific Capital. And I know that his EAs are a part of Strategic Coach as well. So they're learning those concepts and implementing them on that side. So it's been great.
Yeah, I sent my assistant to Strategic Coach's EA course, and that was really, really important. And a great EA is a game changer. I believe every visionary deserves a very high quality, capable EA and an amazing number two leader. And I think so often as entrepreneurs, we compromise in the fact that we don't hire the best. And but once you have those two individuals in your life, you have a lot more time, a lot more freedom, a lot more ability to make a bigger impact, a lot more ability to create a bigger income. So
Yeah.
got a question in the chat here. Josh, how has your approach to hiring changed over the years? Anything you've
Yeah,
done that really made a difference in finding and building better teams?
yeah, good question. We hire very slowly and deliberately. We lean on a lot of tools when we hire. So everybody takes the Colby. We make sure that the role that we're hiring for, the right person is in the right seat. And you can only do so much by feel, getting to know them or looking at a resume. But we use Colby, we use the print score. And then we have a series of a couple different interviews. The first interview actually of a new team member, every single team member that we currently have interviews that person. And so it's not me one-on-one. I'm usually the last one. I send the whole team in to interview them. I'll come in and interview them after that. And if we all feel as a team that they're good, then Chad will come in and interview. Often there's a dinner involved. When I first got hired, Chad and I had a series of interviews. First one was Zoom. Second one was with the team. The third interview, he invited my wife and I to dinner. And I was like, this is strange, right? Like I've never had that before. And it was just, let's go to dinner. We barely talked business, but it was just getting to know each other. And I think he wanted to see how I interacted with the public, how I interacted with my spouse and got to know her. And the fourth interview was, I did not know this was coming, but I came into the office and there were 3 clients of Pacific Capital here in 3 rooms. And clients actually interviewed me. Paying customers of Pacific Capital interviewed me. And, that seems super robust, but I think in hiring a really important role, it's good to get multiple perspectives. We do a lot of that here. We still do the dinner with spouses. But yeah, it's a very deliberate, slow process.
Yep. Hire slow, fire fast. And it's really good that you guys are using the Colby. We have an assessment tool that we use that's works well with the Colby called the Talent Impact Profile, and it actually measures mental aptitudes, their mental acuity and vocabulary and attention to detail, and then also measures their personality dimensions, which are can really measure certain behaviors that would predict future success. And so I have found it to be the best one out there for hiring. If there was a better one, I would definitely use it. So question on EOS. What EOS tools do you find most valuable to review or dig in early, either before deciding to join a company or right after stepping into the integrator role, to get the clear sense of the organization's health and priorities?
Ooh, that's a good one. I mean, I think I don't have, we didn't use a ton of those tools early on. So I wouldn't know as much as you might, Alec, about this. We did implement a lot of the different things like the weekly rock meetings, those types of things, but we didn't do a ton of the deep EOS principles early on. Looking back, I think if we were to do it again, we'd probably go more all in on that. But I was a little new to EOS at that time, so.
Yeah, and in my experience, we've been running on EOS for 10 years, successfully for 5 years, miserably failed self-implementing for 5 years. But I would say a really important tool is the VTO. So that's super important. Make sure that's updated and really study that, because that's the vision. That's the 10-year, 5-year, 3-year, 1-year goals. It has your core focus, your marketing niche on it, your core values. Those are all super important as you make decisions. And the other tool I would highly recommend looking at early is the accountability chart or the organizational chart. So really learning everyone's responsibilities, what their roles are, what their functions are, what are they going to obsess about, and the general reporting structure to be super clear. I think that's really important for an integrator to understand early on and really use as a tool, because it really provides great organizational clarity. This has been great. Some of the questions from the audience here. So here's a question: how should delegation be approached, And what's the best way to ensure the number two leader is given the right level of authority and responsibility?
Yeah, I think setting the expectation on the role that the number two will fill comes first, right? What does being a number two actually mean? What are the things that you're handling as a number two versus what are the things the visionary is handling? Um, Writing that down literally, I think, is an important topic or an important learning tool. Communicating that super on so that the expectation's set. And then as a number two, you also have to be a great delegator. Um, if you're a number two integrator, you cannot do everything yourself and you shouldn't try. And so this is where that shared leadership principle comes in is I know what lane I'm good at and what I'm in, and I delegate a lot of things to the team. And we're really big on that here is if it's not your lane, don't do it. And it's not a matter of you're being lazy or you just don't want to do that. That's just not your lane.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of delegating internally is important. It frees you up to do your highest and best work,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if I should, I'm not doing new business paperwork. Can I do it? For sure. But it's not my role and it's not the best, highest use of my work.
Mm-hmm.
And so early on as an integrator, you're going to have this sense of responsibility and this sense of, I got to get it done because I got to get it done right. But I think maturing in that role is realizing that you may not be the one that's going to get it done right. Someone else on the team is probably better than you at this. And you need to delegate that responsibility and trust over to that person. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I know one of my weaknesses is delegation, right? I'll delegate, but it's like, Shannon Waller, strategic coach, uses the baton example, right? So, I'll hand someone the baton, but in my mind, I've given them the baton. They're not sure if they have the baton, or the baton drops, and I'll follow up. But yes, a great number two is very effective delegator. So, another question from the audience: what are some recommendations on books on leadership?
ooh, that's really good. Some that come to mind are Who Not How.
Hmm.
Um, Benjamin Hardy,
Great book.
great book. I think
Yeah.
that's finding the right who's in life and inside of the company that are good at what they do is a big one. Leaders Eat Last is another one I loved. Um, there's a book called The Carolina Way, Dean Smith, um, that I recently read. That was a great leadership book about they were the Michael Jordan's basketball coach at University of North Carolina. They were the ones who started point to the passer. So in basketball, you'd see somebody score, but that the person that scored would always point to the guy who passed them the ball. And I like that book because it reiterates that we're a team.
Hmm.
And though you might be the one scoring and getting recognition, you got to remember the team that helped you make that point or that put you in that position. And so I've read a lot of leadership books though, so those are a few that come to mind.
One of my favorite books is Good to Great, and Jim Collins in there talks about level five leadership. And I always that section have felt fascinating. Like really good leaders are servant leaders, and when it's time for them to bring on their successor, a really good leader will set the new leader up for success. Where you have these leaders that their egos are so big that they subconsciously want their successor to fail so they can still look big after them. And so that's a really good book. The Five Dysfunctions on a Team is really good. Um, a book I read recently, reread, I should say, is Multiplication by Subtraction by Shannon Waller. So it's a great for leaders to really help them uncover, who's succeeding on their team and who's not and why. So, great question from the audience just popped up. I love this question. What level of involvement or micromanagement does your visionary do? How do you deal with micromanagement?
Yeah, Chad does not micromanage us. He's we've built a lot of trust. I think if at times if he were to get a little too involved, I'll always tell him like, "Hey, I've got this one. Like,
Hmm.
we've got it." Respectfully, right? You have to because it's still his business. You still have to understand that this is his baby and this is something he's built. But I think, yeah, micromanagement is a business killer. It's tough. And so even myself as, the integrator number two, it's when passing that baton, you just have to trust that your team's good and they're going to get it done. Um, because you have that inside of you like, oh, this is a big project. I want to have my hands in it. But
Hmm.
again, staying in your lane, trusting, you just have to have that trust with the team that it's going to go well. And if it doesn't go well, it's an opportunity to learn. And I think, extreme ownership is part of that. Recently, a semi-new team member had this random calendar issue, right? That an appointment was missed, and she stood up in front of everyone and said, "Hey, that's on me. I messed that up." And as small as it was, and as it really didn't even make an impact, everything was fine. But the fact that she did that told me a lot about her. It wasn't, she stood up and owned it and publicly it was like, "Hey, I messed up right there." So that I think makes me feel like that person doesn't need to be micromanaged, right? They're on the ball and people are going to mess up and that's okay. That's life. But if you micromanage them, you're going to break trust. They're going to feel like you don't trust them. And nobody wants to be micromanaged. So
Yeah, I think it was Jim Collins that said, maybe it's Patrick Lencioni, but the moment you realize you have to micromanage someone is the moment you realize you hired the wrong person. So it's super important to hire the right people. I have found that visionaries, some of them are control freaks and they really don't want to let go. And that visionary has to learn to let go. And on the opposite side of that, there are visionaries that let go too much. They're really abdicators and aren't really intentional about communicating expectations and leading. So there's a really good balance between there. Sometimes there is micromanagement because the visionary has hired the wrong number two. And so sometimes it's promoting someone within that's not ready for the role, or a friend. But if there is not trust after some time, then you probably didn't hire the right person. And to all the visionaries out there that are not seeing success and having an integrator number two like Josh, you probably don't have a highly capable number two, if everything else I said was relevant. So if you are in that spot, I would encourage you to reach out to my team and we could have like a strategy session on maybe there's some coaching opportunities, or maybe it means looking at a new number two or moving that person to a different role, and we can help you decide which role that would be. So we have time for one or two more questions. And I want to remind everyone that next month our guest will be Ken Williams of the Black Swan Group. That webinar will be on Monday, April 14th at 11 Eastern Time. So the Black Swan Group is owned by Chris Voss. He's the FBI negotiator. He wrote the book called Never Split the Difference. And we'll be talking to his number two, Ken Williams. So Josh, has there ever been a time where you and Chad were really not aligned?
yeah, I mean, I think that there were some times where I had opinions or thoughts on a decision that was being made and it was different than what his decision was. And it was kind of stewing inside of me. And um, I just called him. It was like after hours, I was at home. I was like, "Hey, I got to talk to you," and we had like a 45-minute conversation about what I thought could happen and what he saw happening. And I think that hour, that talk that we had was super important because I got to get some things off of my chest. Um, but also he listened and then he gave me the reassurance that, hey, this is this is the end goal here. Let's talk about where are we going as a whole. This one decision it's going to work itself out, and it did. And I think that for me, it was just like, hey, Chad's been doing this a long time, and trusting him and seeing that a lot of things have worked out pretty well based on his leadership. But it was important for me at least to be heard, and he gave me that space to do that, which was cool. So we don't have a lot of disagreements really, but that was one kind of recently, like maybe a year-ish ago. That was I just had to call him. I was at home thinking about it, and I was like, I'm just gonna call him, and we had a great talk. So yeah,
That's great. That's great. Yeah, there was one time with my integrator, we were not aligned and it was a people issue. And it was a big people issue. And I was certain that I was correct and accurate that we should keep this person on our team. And we tried everything to keep this person on a team. And after about a year, I'm like, you know what? John was absolutely right. He was absolutely right, and I was wrong. And so it helped me understand when it comes to people issue, he's going to be much more objective, and I'm more emotional based, and so yeah, it was a learning experience for me. So the last question we'll take right now is I'm learning about this role as a number two. And it's interesting to me. What is the best part of being an integrator? Why do you love working with and for a visionary?
a great question. Personally, I like the pressure and responsibility of leadership. You know, we talk a lot about unique ability and where you thrive and what gives you energy. And leadership and that pressure, I think, is a space that I do well in, and it gives me energy. And so, yeah, I mean, I like that pressure. It keeps me sharp. It keeps me growing, and I like being the person that people can lean on for different things. And again, I can't stress this enough, but leadership does not mean authority, right? Nobody, if you ask the entire team, nobody sees me as their boss or even like a supervisor. I wouldn't even use that word, right? So team captain is kind of more of what I think of, and I just like that responsibility and the pressure of that, I guess. So
Yeah, I love it, Josh. I love it. And I don't think I've ever heard that example as a team captain, but that is so true, especially in cultures like yourself. You have an amazing culture and you can have a team captain, right? If the culture was different, you wouldn't be able to be a team captain. You'd have to be a true authoritarian type leader. So Josh, it was so awesome spending time with you today. Thank you for your time and your wisdom. We appreciate it. And is there anything that people can do to learn more about your company?
yeah. So you go to pacificcapital.com. We're a family office working exclusively with high net worth entrepreneurs, business owners. We're a team that you hire if you want to delegate all of your financial responsibility to the pros. Um, we're a unique boutique high service team. We don't work with everyone, but I would say our clients that we do have, they're great people. So yeah, pacificcapital.com. To schedule a conversation, you would go to goalsconversation.com, and yeah, that's how you reach us.
Awesome. And for those out there, you saw an example of an amazing number two leader in Josh. And if you want more information on how the right number two leader can transform your business, you can reach out to me at discover@vision-spark.com or look at our website, which is visionsparksearch.com.